Good afternoon and welcome to Comic Con Africa 2020. Hope you guys are having fun. Thank you to the DreamWorks crew for an amazing interview. Guys, next up we have a legend in the house. Please help me welcome Johnny Bosch.
Hey there, can you guys hear me all right?
I hear you clearly.
Oh, perfect. All right.
All right, dude. Very
Hi.
nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice meeting you too.
How are you keeping?
I'm all right. Yeah.
You all right?
I'm doing okay with all the craziness. Yeah.
Yeah. Where about are you right now?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
in California.
That's
Yeah.
nice. How's the weather there? Because South Africa is really warm out here.
We've had a few fires. It did look like Tatooine for a few weeks there, but or for a few days, but it seems to be clearing up right now. So things are cool, I think.
Okay, cool.
Hopefully.
That's sweet, man. And look, at what age did you know that you wanted to get into acting?
Um, That's a good question. When I was younger, I grew up watching Kung Fu theater, and
Right.
so really I wanted to be an action star. I just wanted to do martial arts on TV. And I don't really know what age that started, but it was pretty young. And so, to actually be able to start out on Power Rangers was pretty cool for me.
Yeah, but do you remember your first experience in front of an audience?
My first experience in front of an audience was in school. I took this class that was like an intro to speech or something like that, and I remember having to play this goofy superhero, and I remember just going way over the top, completely out of my comfort zone, and I remember seeing a couple people chuckle or laugh, and I thought, this is kind of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it just kind of got sucked into it.
That's a
Really.
great feeling, when you feel like you've got a whole room of people looking at you and entertained by you.
Yeah, and when you connect,
Yeah.
when things connect, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
And it's that instant gratification when you're on stage. Immediately you know whether they like you or not, or if they're enjoying it.
Yeah, exactly.
I know as a
Yeah,
comedian,
you get a yay or a boo.
yeah, yeah. I know as a comedian, I know whether I've got an hour show. In my first 5 minutes, I know how the rest of the show's gonna go. You know
Yeah, that's
immediately this
about
is
right.
gonna be
Yeah.
good or it's gonna be bad. Because look, I had Power Rangers posters on my wall as a kid. Did you ever think getting into Power Rangers? Did you ever think that it would be this big and be so influential around the world? Like my school, we started karate classes at my school because of Power Rangers. Because the kids saw what was
Oh wow.
happening on TV and in the movie, and instead of us kicking ass during lunchtime, they're like, okay, cool, let's channel that energy into something. And we started karate classes. Did you have any idea what you were a part of at the time?
No, no idea. I mean, I, I'd caught a little bit of it on television once. I can't remember. I remember coming home from school and flipping on the television, and it was on, and I started watching it, and I was like, oh wow, man, this is kind of what I want to do. I want to be doing that stuff what those guys are doing. But no, I had no idea it was going to be as big as it eventually became. I didn't even know at the time when it was really popular. Right before I came onto the show, like it just started taking off. So I'd not seen any of that, and knew anything about it really, other than like it was a show that like a kids show, and
Right.
so getting to kind of experience that when things are really taking off was pretty cool.
So take us through the steps. So you see it on television, and then you land up in the movie. Like what what is it between that space? What exactly happens? It's
Right. Well, actually, we went to. I mean, I grew up in Texas, and then I moved to California to be a part of the show, and so we did the television show. I can't remember exactly how many episodes, but we did like maybe a season. maybe a couple seasons before we actually went and did the film in Australia. So we had some, you know, it was almost like boot camp on the
Right.
television show, how things were going to work. Because it was the first, you know, anything on camera that I had ever done, you know. So there's a quick learning experience, you know, and like I said, like a boot camp, and just going through how things work. And then, yeah, then it was quickly onto the movie. But then the movie was like a much bigger budget, and so
Yeah.
everything was much bigger, you know, and super exciting.
But in
So
the
yeah,
so in the
like
audition for Power Rangers, what is the first thing they're asking? Are you first acting and showing your and doing dialogue, or are they asking for flying kicks? Which is what comes first?
yeah, it was the martial arts. It was definitely you had. I remember. So I studied Shaolin Kung Fu, and my instructor was looking at the newspaper, and he called me over, and he was like, "Hey, they're looking for new Power Rangers." And I saw the picture, and I was like, "Well, what is it? What do you mean? What Power Rangers?" And so I saw a picture of the, you know, they're standing there like superheroes looking for new Power Rangers, and I was like, "Is it stunt people? Or are they looking for new actors?" He's like, "I don't know. It doesn't say." He was like, "But you should go give it a shot." And so he kind of helped me put together a routine, you know, kicking and flipping and all that stuff. And I went out to this audition. It was a big cattle call, so it wasn't just in Texas. It was like all over the U.S.
Oh wow.
And they would hold, you know, the cattle call auditions. So there were thousands of people that showed up, at least to the one that I went to. And so I assume that that was like that everywhere. And you know, there's all sorts of people, but in the newspaper article, you had to be either a martial artist, a dancer, or a gymnast. And I was a martial artist, but I could also do, you know, acrobatics and flip and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it went and just prepared to do some martial arts stuff. And then they bring you in. There was maybe 20 at a time. And they said, "All right, you can stay. The rest of you go home." And they kind of like filtered us out first by looks. And then they brought us in. "All right, show us what you could do," which was, you know, dance or martial arts or whatever. So I did my martial arts stuff. And then they gave me a piece of paper, you know, that had some dialogue on it. And they said,
Yeah.
"All right, come back at this time, and then you'll be doing this." So I changed my clothes. Like at first I was in my sweats so I can kick and flip. And then I went home and I changed into, you know, tight jeans. And then I showed up just to read this monologue stuff. And I read the monologue, and they were like, "Oh, that's great. Can you do some more of that kung fu stuff that you were doing?"
Like,
And I
give
was
me a
like,
second.
yeah, sure." "Oh, yeah, hang on." And I had tight jeans on, so I couldn't really kick very high. And there's like a lot of people in the room at the time. And there's one lady that was there who was just very friendly. And then all these guys that were sitting there that were just angry looking, like arms crossed, and just like they were not smiling at all, not happy to be there. And so all I did was like, I felt like I couldn't kick. So I'd try to flip and I'd kick. And then every time I'd do like a ridiculous pose, and I would look at the lady because she would smile, and I'd be like, "All right, okay." And I just kept going. And then eventually they're like, "Okay, thank you." And then, you know, a couple weeks later, I went and registered for college, but then I got a phone call from my brother that said, "Hey, they want you to go to California for another audition."
Oh
I
wow.
went to California, auditioned again, and that's kind of, I ended up booking the role then.
Well, so was that your first experience with an audition,
Yes.
and you got the
Yeah.
job? That's
Yes.
pretty amazing. Wow, that's
It was
crazy.
pretty crazy.
And how were your
Yeah.
parents with this? Like choosing Power Rangers over getting an education. How were they at the time?
Completely supportive. Yeah, they were like, "Okay, go for it," you know.
Right.
And so it was scary though, because I was young, you know, 18, you know, just turned 18, and then I'm coming out to California on my own, you know, without my parents. I'd never been away from my parents for more than, you know, a week, and that was just do some soccer training or whatever. And so it was a different experience for me,
That's
but pretty cool.
but how so leaving home and you joined this very successful TV show. How was your environment in LA, and did you get along with the cast?
Yeah, it was a little scary. You know, I'm, you know, more of a shy kind of guy. Like I'm not like really gonna be out there because I don't want to embarrass myself or whatever, right? Insecure, but it was a little scary because I didn't know anyone. But there was a couple other people, you know, Karen and Steve, that also came out from California, so I got to know them. Karen became like a really good friend of mine. I remember over a weekend, there's like maybe 2 or 3 days that, or it might have even been a week. I can't remember exactly, but there was like a time where I was like running out of food while we were there because we hadn't gotten paid yet, and so I had moved out there, and we just got set up into an apartment, and I had like no food, and I was like, we were working on set, and so I could eat there, but then when I got home, there's like no food, and then there's like a week I feel like we didn't work or something, and over a weekend for sure I had like zero food, and I was starving. I felt like I was going to die. I was laying like on like the floor in my living room with like clothes around me like as blankets, and I'm like, man, am I gonna die like this? And then Karen calls up. She's like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, I'm so hungry right now. She's like, come on over. She had like a sandwich, and I made a sandwich and ate, and so I was able to survive that weekend until we got paid.
That's awesome, though. But it's cool that you still have these relationships with the cast from the Power Rangers. Did you, when you shot the movie in Australia? Tell me about that. Like, that's you shooting in a totally different environment. And how was it at that young age, being away from the family? I know you had been living in LA for some time, but how was that being in a totally different environment, just cast and crew around you? And as a young person in the industry, did you ever, how do you ask this? Did you ever misbehave, or was it easy to just stay on the straight and narrow?
Well, I think for the most part, I didn't get into a lot of trouble. We worked very long hours. It was, it was not uncommon for us to work a 14 to 16-hour day. So we would get up super early, head in, and then come back, and the day was over. You're just gonna crash and fall asleep. And in the movie was not very different from that. It felt actually like more, because we would switch from shooting days to shooting nights and being up all night. So kind of crazy. I know some of the other guys for sure got into trouble. And I won't talk about the things that they got into while we were out there.
Yeah. So I just can imagine, like, young people, you're getting money for the first time, you're on television, you're doing movies. It must be an amazing feeling. Like, you would want to have a little bit of fun.
It was pretty awesome. I did stupid things, but I didn't really get into that much trouble. Though,
right.
So, maybe not that interesting for you. But,
you stayed up late.
I just would train and work out or whatever, and that's kind of all I did. I didn't have any friends other than the people on set, so it was like, well, I've just spent all day with them. I don't want to hang out with them again. I just kind of want my own time,
Right.
For me, I am the type of person that needs that time to decompress and get ready for the next day. Other people, it's like they energize around other people. So it's like after the day is done, they got to go hang out and party.
Right.
But me, it was like, I just want to chill.
With shooting something like Power Rangers, do you guys work out on set, like during those long period breaks, just to keep the body going? And also, like, with the great physique, I guess you guys, as hard as you're working on set, you still got to keep up your workouts.
I trained with I trained with Jason Frank quite a bit when we were there in Australia, even in LA in the beginning earlier on, and Steve a little bit as well. But we didn't really have like a group rehearsal or anything, if that's what you're thinking. There was never we did a lot of fight stuff, but it was not something that we spent weeks rehearsing. There was a couple times with maybe a couple of the girls where they did that, but all the guys were martial artists, other than David Yost, but he's a gymnast, so he could pick things up pretty fast. And so everyone was you show up on set, and then Alpha Stunts and Koichi Sakamoto would be like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Or they'd ask you, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I could do this weird butterfly twist thing that, I saw one of the guys do, but I landed it. And so we would just kind of incorporate whatever we could do into the fight,
Right. Did you do most of your stunts, though?
Yeah, I did. On the show, we did a lot. So there's the helmet head stuff, right? So the helmet head stuff, most of it on the show was stock footage from Japan. They did start to shoot more and more of that, like on our side, but later on in the seasons. But earlier on, it was mostly just stock footage. Now, obviously, whenever we were, at least our group, when you could see our faces and we're fighting as civilians,
Yes.
that was us. I know
Okay.
in later years, we used a bunch of stunt people because you could tell they're like covering their face when they move. But for us, we did all our stuff. So that was a lot of fun. That was actually the most fun for me. I would flip through the script and say, "When are we fighting? Who gets what in the fight?" So
How
that was the
often?
more exciting stuff.
How often do you use its morphin time in your personal life?
Person like now.
I spoke to Jason the other day, Jason Frank, and he said he
uh,
does morphin time just to play with people on the streets.
I don't. I don't use it a whole lot. Yeah.
We have a
I
question.
don't.
We have a question from a fan for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Kayla asked, "What was it like to work on Pro Mam?"
On what?
Pro Mam.
Oh, Promare.
Yeah.
Oh, that awesome. It was really awesome and super fun. A beautiful, not only great story and great character, but like it looked beautiful. And I mean, Trigger's so amazing, and their animation is awesome, and their storytelling is just like it was insane. It was really super cool, fun to work on, and boy, I really wish there's more for it.
Right. Did it bring out a different side of you completely when you move to voiceover artists?
Well, that one specifically, I mean, it is its own thing for sure. I know I did maybe borrow a couple ideas. Usually, like, okay, so when you go in for an audition, actually, I'll tell you the audition for this one, I didn't even audition for that character because I thought it was a female when I saw the picture. They sent a
Oh,
bunch of
snap.
images of the characters, and when you get an audition through an email, you kind of check, and they don't always separate the male characters from females. You just see them, and then you click on them, and you go, all right, well, that's a male. I'll audition for that one. That's a male. I'll try that one, or that
Yeah.
one. You judge basically. And I was looking at it, I was like, well, that's a girl. I'm not going to do that one. And
Right.
so I auditioned for these characters, sent it out, and they said, hey, why don't you audition for this one? This one's, you missed this one. I was like, well, because that's a girl. And Stephanie Shea was like, no, it's not. You need to audition for this one. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So I auditioned for it, not really realizing how important the character was. And then, yeah, I booked that one. But I will say, like, in the beginning of what I was trying to say is in the beginning of any show that you work on, you do kind of borrow things that you've done before from other characters because you're not exactly sure what the story is,
Yeah.
in the audition. So I did borrow from here and there, a little bit of Lelouch here or there, and just kind of peppered him in on that audition. And then once I found out the story, then I could take it out from there and build him. And where's that arc going to go and
Right.
figure out that whole,
But do you
thing.
find
So,
voiceover acting to be a bit easier than traditional acting? Or they both have their
no,
difficulties?
they do both have, they're very different. They are very different. You can obviously on camera, you rely on yourself entirely, unless you've got like all this makeup on or prosthetics or something. But in voice acting, you only have your voice. And so for me, I just try to like find out what it is, what's the heartbeat of the character. And then I just try to, go from there. And hopefully I can reveal more about the character through the emotions as you get through, like peeling layers of an onion, and you become, I don't know, more colorful throughout. But I guess you do that in film as well, but it's different. They're very different.
Right. I have a question here. How exactly do they dub? Is that a lot of work with the overdubbing?
With dubs, the tricky thing is matching flaps. And
Right.
so like if the character's mouth is moving, you've got to match those flaps. And what's tricky is it's another language. And so
Oh, yeah.
sometimes they pause in weird places, or they don't complete their sentences and things are implied, or jokes don't come across in English. And so you've got to adjust certain things like that, and you have to make
Yeah.
it sound natural. Otherwise you have these odd pauses. So it can be tricky for sure, but eventually I'm a musician, so eventually you can kind of pick up a rhythm, and go,
Right.
okay, I kind of see where this is going, and then you can, kind of jump in.
What instruments do you play?
Mainly the guitar, but
Right.
I do tinker. Like I mess with the keys a bit here and there, and I don't really drum, but I do have drums, and I do play them. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at drums, but I still I try to play everything. But the guitar, is my main thing.
If you chose to go to university instead of joining the Power Rangers cast, what were you going to be studying?
Film. I was going to
Okay.
study film.
Okay, that's
Yeah, in
awesome.
fact, actually, Karen was going to go to the same college and do exactly the same thing, and she ended up becoming the Yellow Ranger. And so it was kind of cool that we would
Yeah.
have crossed paths at some point, anyways. But
Do
yeah,
you, do you feel like being on this set of a film or TV show taught you things a lot quicker than what it would have taken if you were at university studying film?
I think absolutely. Well, I mean, I didn't go to film school, so I don't really
Yeah.
know. But I can assume that it, being able to experience it firsthand, um, for sure. I think there's a lot of things that I learned that you wouldn't have learned in school, and I'm sure that the things that they teach you in school might be. I'm not saying it is, but it might be like off maybe a year or two.
Right.
Because I don't know if those instructors are still working in film. I guess it depends on the instructor, really, because I know that I just shot this thing in January, and I was using terms that I'm familiar with in LA, but we shot in Texas, and in Texas they don't say all the same terms, so I had to like constantly like explain what I meant by certain things.
Right.
So I'm sure there's a little bit of that as well from school and actual production.
Johnny, we have a few fan questions for you. Are you
Okay.
cool with answering them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Sweet. Do you play the games that you work on? If so, which is your favorite?
I've tried. I'm terrible at games. I'm really bad.
You the
I
real
need
life
like
thing.
I just can't. I can't. I don't know. Like I can't. I can't even play Roblox. My kid will beat me at like Minecraft, anything. I'm no good. Um, and so I haven't played a whole lot, but there are certain ones that I've tried out. Like Yokai Watch was kind of cool and kind of fun. Of course, Devil May Cry. So there are a few, but again, I'm not really good at games.
How,
Um,
how old is
and
your kid?
yeah.
Said you have a kid. How old is your kid?
Well, my daughter's 9, my son is 5,
So do
and so my 5-year-old.
they know about your history with Power Rangers and that your dad is this legend?
They, yeah, well, I mean, not a legend, but they know that I was a Power Ranger,
Have they
and
ever
so
seen the episodes or the movie?
they they have not seen the movie. I have not. I haven't forced them to watch anything, but
Look at me.
I,
Look
I
at
know
me.
it's like yeah, tie them to a chair. You have to watch this. I am amazing. Obey me. No, they like. There's been a couple times where I'd seen it on Netflix, and I'm like, all right, well, let's check it out, and then try to watch it, and I couldn't sit through it. And so, but that's just me because I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I doing back then? But my son kind of liked stuff in it, but then not so much. He was just like, I don't. They haven't. Well, I just said that they haven't really.
But
They're not that impressed by me.
are you at least training them when it comes to martial arts?
I am training them at home. Yeah, I
Okay.
do definitely now more than I ever did. But yeah, I've definitely shown them a few things here and there, and they were taking martial arts in class before all this stuff kind of went down, and so they, it was kind of cool seeing them do things that, that I kind of did when I was younger and wanted to do. So it was nice to be able to sneak in and say, all right, well, here's what I learned and how you can beat this person
Right.
in jujitsu, or this person, or how to maneuver out of this. So it was kind of fun to give them insight.
Sweet. Got another fan question. What was the first anime you worked on, and how were you approached by that?
Trigun was the first anime that I worked on, and For that, I did a live action film called Extreme Heist. It might be called Wicked Game overseas in different areas. And the audio was messed up, so I had to dub myself. And so I was dubbing myself on this live action film. And the producer of that film walked in and he was like, "Hey, you have a decent hero voice." And I didn't really think much of it, but he was listening in. And then he had asked me after a couple sessions, "Hey, you want to come audition for this animation that I'm doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." This was after Power Rangers, so I was like, "Yeah, I just wanted to work. I was looking for a job." And so I went in and auditioned. They played me both. They played me. There was like an English, maybe a scratch track for the character, or maybe somebody else was going to play him. I'm not sure. And then they played a Japanese reference of the character, and they said, "Can you do something more like the Japanese?" Because the English that I heard was very deep and gruff, and the Japanese was goofy and wild. And I was like, "Yeah, I could try." And so I gave it a shot, and then they called me up and said, "Hey, you're going to be voicing Vash and Trigun." And I wasn't familiar with Trigun at all, but it was a great first series to work on. I was very fortunate. It was a lot of fun, and it was a very good learning experience for me.
Right. What is your hero voice? Can you put on your hero voice quickly?
My Put on my hero voice. well, what should I say? I'm a hero.
We've got another question here. Are you excited to return to Bleach?
Of course. Yes, absolutely. I mean, as soon as I found out that they were actually continuing it, yeah, I was like, thanks, yes, please, make it come sooner. Yeah, it ended kind of on a weird note for me. It was a little bittersweet,
Right.
I'd been doing it for so long, and then it kind of just felt like, wait, that's where we're ending it. It wasn't even like the complete story, and so it was like a little like, oh, kind of a letdown. So really excited to kind of be able to get back in there. And they haven't mentioned anything. If I haven't started. I'll just tell you that I haven't started.
Okay.
Nobody's contacted me, but hopefully that does happen in the future.
Right. So, which character do you think was the most difficult to voice?
Oh gosh. I mean, there were probably a few. A lot of times, they kind of start out, you're not really 100%. Code Geass, Lelouch was a little tricky in the beginning because I wasn't really sure where he was going or why. He was way over the top when he was Zero. Renton was one that was kind of tough from Eureka 7 because the pitch, they wanted me to pitch up as high as possible.
Right.
And that was kind of a little uncomfortable for me at first. I did do this game. I'll say I've told the story a ton of times, but I don't know the name of the game, but I got a phone call. I was like, "Hey, you want to come in and voice some miscellaneous characters in this game?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Games pay a lot better, so it's usually like, "Yes, please." And so I went in. They're like, over here on this table, they had like the scripts, and they're like, "You're gonna be," and it was like a goblin, but then it had a number. He's like Goblin 13 or whatever it was. And he's like, "Come on, check it out. Look at this is what you're going to be doing." And so I started going through the script, and it was all just vowels. It was like O's and O-O-A and I-I-E-E. And like there weren't letters. And I was like, or words. And I was like, "Well, what is this?" "It's just vowels across the thing." He's like, "Oh yeah, you're just a goblin. So you're going to be making goblin noises." And I had never done any creature noises ever, anything.
Right.
I've only done just regular voice. And so I had no idea what to do. And I was a little confused and kind of scared because I was like, holy cow, I'm going to blow it. Like they called me in. I don't know what a goblin sounds like. And then I was like freaking out trying to think what to do. And I had this guinea pig when I was little, and it would talk to me and I would talk back to it and I would go, right. And so I looked up at him and I was like, like that. And he was like, yeah, do that. And so for 4 hours, I was squealing like a guinea pig. And it's like, all right, now you're falling off a cliff. onto a spike, you know, and electrocuted, you know. And so I came up with all these weird, like, guinea pig goblin noises. And but at the end of that session, it was a very hard session because it was all like fighting and charging and yelling. And at the end of that session, I couldn't speak. I couldn't talk anymore. And I could taste a little bit of, you know, blood in the back of my throat. I'm like, my goodness. And that was like when I was like, man, I need to double check anytime I come in for a job, how much screaming I'm going to have to do. But I mean, it was a good experience, but at the same time, it was probably the hardest.
Have you ever tried out like these new voices on the kids or people around you at home?
I mean, occasionally, yeah.
Or you?
Occasionally, there's not one that's like my go-to, but I'll just do different voices. Like, I don't know, like the dog or something talking to the kids or whatever. You know, I'll make a voice for them occasionally. Yeah.
Sorry, I want to ask you, what is your dog voice? You brought it up.
Well, Radar, he's kind of a dumb dog, so he talks kind of like this. I am hungry. It's a ridiculous voice. Yeah,
That's funny.
it's not. I didn't say it was a great voice.
But I see it. I see it. What characters? Which character of yours that you've played do you feel like relates most to you?
I mean, I do have to find a way to relate to every character,
Right.
somehow. Yeah, obviously it's harder for some than others, but I don't know. You know, I guess my go-to, like, it's really, I guess it'd be those characters that I can really just jump into, like Nero from the Devil May Cry series. Like, I can just jump into that character. Ichigo, I can jump into that character. I do also feel kind of that way with like Kaneda and Akira. Lelouch took a while for me to get used to, but I can get there now. But yeah, again, it really is. Well, Vash is another one, but you have to find a way to relate to the character so that you kind of believe you would say these things or do these things or react a certain way, you know, and if you could do that, then hopefully the audience can hear it and think, oh, that's natural. Or it doesn't stand out in their ear, you know?
Right. No, I hear you.
No,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, I get you. We have another question. Do you ever watch the animes you do voices in?
Sometimes, yeah. There are a few shows that I've seen. I mean, I've seen most of them, but it obviously takes me a lot longer to get to them. But yeah, I have for sure. Especially certain ones where, like Persona 4, where I'm playing Adachi and Narukami, like the protagonist and antagonist, you know, and I'm like talking to myself, and I wanted to see how it came out, you know, or Ichigo and Hollow Ichigo. Want to see how that came out, if I sound like the same guy, or if I sound slightly different or different enough. And so especially those cases, I definitely try to watch. But for the most part, I've seen just about all of them, yeah.
Right. Can you give us a line from Ichigo?
Let's see. That's not shouting, right? Let me think. Rukia, why do your drawings suck so bad?
The fans are going crazy for that, man. They're really enjoying it.
They probably want me to shout Bankai, but I'd wake up my kids.
Which are the biggest fans yet that you've received from a show?
Biggest fans? Well, Power Rangers definitely is one of the biggest, I guess, for me, as far as a show that had a draw like that. Trigun's another one. Bleach is definitely one. And I've worked. Oh, actually, Code Geass is another one. There are a handful. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a couple, at least in my experience. When people come to me, I see a lot of, you know, Bleach or Power Rangers or Trigun. Like I said, Code Geass. There's Devil May Cry is also another one. Persona 4 is another that I see quite often come across my table.
We'd love to see you in South Africa.
Oh,
That,
that'd be awesome. When my manager contacted me, I was like, "Oh, really? That would be amazing." And they're like, "Well, not this first time because of COVID and all this craziness." I was like, "Oh yeah, but that would be amazing. I would love to.
have you ever
That'd be
been?
awesome."
Have you ever been to South
No, I
Africa,
haven't.
Africa? Never. Okay, cool.
I have not. Never. Yeah. So it would be amazing. It'd be awesome.
You'd love it. When all of this is over, you should definitely come through. We'd love to see you
All
here.
right. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Just have a couple more questions for you, Johnny.
Uh-huh.
Do you have any advice for aspiring voice actors?
Um, Gosh, I guess it kind of depends on where you are. I guess if you're starting out, I would definitely start training acting wise, you know. Trying to think of things that I would have wanted to know. You know, I definitely would have started practicing lip flaps, matching lip flaps, you know. So if there's a way for you to be able to watch, you know, an anime with it muted and loop a certain section and then try to start doing some dialogue, like, you know, people do fan dubs, that would be a great practice.
Right.
And then I would prepare like a handful, like maybe 5 characters that are like, you can go to these characters pretty quickly, you know, because sometimes now, especially, you get cast for a game or a show and then they're like, this is the character you're playing, but you're also going to play this character and this character and these other characters. So you have to have like a kind of a grab bag of
Right.
characters you can kind of go to. Sometimes, and they don't always want cartoony, so you have to have like, you know, some cartoony things that you can do, which I find most times people can come up with a ton of cartoony voices, but then to find like a handful of natural voices is a little more complicated.
Right. So kind of
But I would start there.
sorry.
Oh, no, go for it.
Oh, so if you pretty much saying fill up your arsenal, and be prepared for whatever comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing I would say is like once this COVID thing happened, you know, I like I said, I shot a film in January, and I had a visual effects guy that was going to help me out, but he kind of got busy, and so I just started tinkering with it myself. And through the months that we were in lockdown, I figured out like how to do my own VFX. And so I learned VFX, visual effects, and through that I kind of learned some animation and some, you know, some stop motion and frame by frame animation. And so I kind of like went through this strange training period while we're in lockdown. And so now I'm like, well, I could animate things now too if I wanted to. It'd take a long time, but I could do it. And so I would say start doing that stuff too. Start figuring out how, if you can animate on your own, and because then you can create your own projects, you know, and
Right.
then obviously put yourself in there. And so that's a good, especially now, because like I got my microphone here, although we're not listening to it now, but I dub from home now. You know,
Oh,
I have
sweet.
my own studio because of my band, but you know, obviously we'd go to the studio, but once lockdown happened, fortunately for me, I have a booth and I have stuff here. And so I would prepare yourself at home to be able to do those things on your own. If you can animate on your own, if you can record on your own, I think it's going to take you a step farther.
Would you ever do an anime series on your band?
You know, I do have some ideas. I tossed these ideas. Jason Narvi, actually, who played Skull in Power Rangers.
Yeah.
I tossed him this band idea that I had for a script, a comedy, and I pulled a lot of things from actual experiences of being in a band. But he started writing on his own as well. But yes, so kind of in a way, yeah,
Right.
something like that.
We have one more question for you, Johnny, before you go.
Okay.
Sorry, let me hear that again. Do you read the manga before voice acting in anime?
Occasionally, it's not always that easy, or at least it's not easy for me to find. Anytime I get booked for something and I don't know anything about it, I absolutely try to find as much as I can. And sometimes that is, you know, I find the manga. But other times I find where like I have to pay for the manga, you know, and all these other things. I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. But occasionally I can find it, I can track it down, and I can look into it and see what's going on. But a lot of times, if they'll send me some stuff if I ask for it. But I don't read through a lot of it. Bleach is one that I've kind of gone through, because I wanted to know how they actually were ending it.
Right.
But there are a handful that I kind of looked through, but nothing that I really kind of jumped into. Once you start working on a project, then you just kind of commit to what you're doing.
Right.
If that makes sense, if that explains it.
Johnny, thank you so much for your time, bro. Really
Oh,
appreciate it.
thank
The
you.
fans have really enjoyed it. It's been great catching up with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Sweet, man.
I hope that one day I can be out there and we can hang out and high five.
Yeah. Thank you so much, hey, Johnny. Have a great day.
No problem. You take care.
You too. All right, guys, that was Johnny Bosch. We're going to have a quick word from our sponsors, and then don't go anywhere because we'll be back.